Hey, it's Webs here with part 2 of the card review for the Deadmines mini set. I didn't want to flood everyone's sub boxes with additional videos, so I'm just going to combine the last 2 days of card reveals into one video since there was only going to be one epic card revealed anyways, and I thought it would be a better way to do it instead of having a 1 minute long video and a, 12 minute long second video. With the introduction out of the way, let's get into the cards. Like yesterday, we're going to start off with a bad Demon Hunter card, sadly. This card is one of those cards that I don't know why it's getting printed. The only deck this could fit into really would be Death Rattle Demon Hunter, or if you try to design an entire deck around it where you're only running like 5 minions tops. However, if you're doing that, you can't run any 2-ofs because then there'd be cases where those 2-ofs would both be chosen out of your deck, and thus they would just instantly kill each other. The upside though is this card doesn't say fight to the death, which means they probably only attack each other one time, so maybe it can be played in something like Death Rattle, but I honestly don't see its purpose, and it's really sad to say because most cards I can find a purpose for. The second card that got revealed today was Jerry Rig Carpenter. This card looks strong on paper, but in standard there is only like 1 or 2 homes that this could possibly fit in, and I don't think either of those decks necessarily need this type of card to be any better. Those homes being either Clown Druid or Questline Druid. Probably is going to be better in Questline just because it'll let you armor up a bit more. Maybe you can actually make some type of armor stall druid that just goes into fatigue, but with Questline Mage floating around and Questline Warlock, that probably isn't a good option. So unless there's another choose one spell in the works in this set or the next set, I don't know how playable this card is actually going to end up being. This card text is perfect to describe some of the card choices I've made it late at night. Unlike Guidance is the third Hearthstone card that got revealed today, this card is pretty good when it comes to resource generation, as most cards that you're going to include in your deck, you're going to want additional copies of it at some situations here and there. Especially in a deck like the Moonfang deck that I made, this would be a perfect card just in case to try to get additional Moonfang out of the deck, or maybe another type of draw card to try to search out the Moonfang, such as Living Seed. Could see this seen home in any type of modern Hearthstone Druid deck. It's just a well-rounded card. Doggy Biscuit is the Hunter card that got revealed today. Honestly, I don't know how much this will actually be played for the buff itself, but I can see this being played in Rat King Hunter along with the Stormwind Piper in order to give it rush, which is the one thing the deck actually really needed, along with the fact that the deck actually got some type of win condition in the form of Defias Slash Fisher. I actually am pretty hopeful for Rat King to actually make an appearance as a meta relevant deck this time around, and the 2-3 buff is actually not that bad to consider putting in a deck anyways when you're trying to swarm the board with a bunch of minions. The first rare that Mage got was Deepwater Invoker. This is definitely one of those cards that actually has a lot of potential, but I don't know how useful it'll be currently. Big Spell Mage sadly just doesn't exist right now since there's not that many good big spells, and a deck that you'd want to run this in is not going to be running a shit ton of spells. You're going to only be running a few spells, and at this point, actually kind of funny enough, Mage almost has the ability to just run an entire minion deck that tutors out certain spells out of your deck, so maybe Cthulhu could be a playable Mage deck. Something I'll definitely try out as a deck list, but I don't think it's going to be any good, but time will tell. And honestly, this is definitely one of those cards that it's only going to be a matter of time before it actually sees home in a Mage deck, as long as some of the anti-minion cards rotate out of standard for Mage. Mage got a second rare revealed today, which is a Big Spell. This is definitely not what Big Spell Mage needed. The cost for this card is too low even for Big Spell, and it's honestly just a worse Apex's Blast, which I know is rotating out, but still, with Apex's Blast, you can actually target face. This card can only target minions, and sure, you might be gaining an extra minion from this, but Apex's Blast always gives you a 5 cost unit, so why would you ever run this over Apex's Blast? I really just don't see the world where this is going to be a playable card, which continues to sadly demonstrate the Blizzard policy that it seems to be with Mage, where there's a bunch of Mage decks that exist that keep getting support, but because they're only getting 1 or 2 cards supported at a time, you honestly end up with a bunch of decks that just can't even function in an actual deck, and thus you're forced to rely on the no minion Mage package to be competitive with Mage at all standard format, which to me at this point is kind of getting annoying, but it is how Blizzard's going to keep balancing their class, so there's nothing really that we can do about it. Righteous Defense is the 7th card that got revealed. Honestly, this is probably one of the most powerful cards that have been revealed. It serves as a removal tool, and it also serves as a hand buff, which is kind of insane for hand buff Paladin. Also, any Paladin deck. It's honestly one of those cards that's probably going to always see play in Paladin in standard while it's in rotation, as long as there are big minions for you to steal a bunch of attack and health from, which is kind of cool. And I'm kind of scared of how much potential this card possibly has in standard, to be honest. The second card that Paladin got revealed today was Wealth Redistributor. This card honestly looks terrible. Now, don't get me wrong, I can see some of the uses the card has, such as swapping a Silverhand recruit with the attack of a minion that was really buffed up in your hand, and thus doing a bunch of damage in one turn, since your opponent might not deal with every single recruit that you play out. But for the most part, you're going to end up swapping the attack of this minion with one of your really buffed up cards in any type of modern Paladin deck, since all of the Paladin decks right now do some type of buffs, and I don't see how this would see any play in anything else. Sure, it might be good in some type of mirror match, but if there's a tie, how does the game decide? Is it always going to decide on your minions, or is it always going to swap with your opponent's minions? So I don't actually see the home where this actually fits in Paladin. And that kind of sucks to say, because as a neutral card, or maybe a rogue, because it would fit the theme of rogue, stealing something from another unit or another class, this would actually be a decent card. But because it's in Paladin, I don't think it's going to be playable, sadly. Alright, Priest's rare that got revealed is Copycat. I just want to start off and ask the question, why isn't this a parrot? Like, really, why isn't this a parrot? It doesn't fit the theme of the overarching set. It's not a pirate cat. And this effect actually sounds like a card that would be a parrot instead of a cat. But that doesn't actually change the fact that this card will probably actually see some type of play as a control tool to either delay your opponent's big combo for a turn, or their questline reward from being dropped down if you know your opponent is going to be completing it the next turn. And because it has good stats, it really is just going to generate you a card, which is something that Priest does anyways, so it's an alright card. I'm just confused why this is a cat instead of a parrot. It should really be a parrot. Rogue got a rare revealed also, which is Parlay. This card honestly is just a meme card. There's a bunch of cards actually in standard that follow this theme, such as the secret that changes the next card your opponent draws into a banana, I think. And then there's the card that replaces a random card in each player's hand with a fish, if I remember right. From a meme standpoint, this card is kind of funny. Maybe there will be some control rogue playing all those types of cards if combo decks get really out of control. But oh wait, combo decks did really get out of control, and no type of control deck actually showed up from Rogue. I don't think this one additional card is going to make that type of deck actually be a thing, but I could see out of all those meme style of cards that Parlay is going to actually see more play than the others, since this actually does give you a benefit of giving yourself some type of card from your opponent's deck instead of just meming them, instead of going -1 with whatever card you just played. So overall, cool for meme status, but bad probably overarching, sadly. And definitely outshadowed by Backwater Cutlass as a common card, which is kind of a shock still to think about that card. And to continue the streak of kind of bad cards, Sucker Hook is the Shaman rare for the set that honestly looks really bad. I don't have any way to defend this. I don't actually know all the weapons that are currently in standard for this to actually transform into. Is there actually a weapon for each cost for this to just scale up from 1 to 9 at this point? Because I don't honestly think there is. So what happens if there's no targets for it to evolve into? Is it just going to whiff and give you nothing? Is it going to destroy your weapon because there's nothing to evolve it into? I don't know. I wish I had better answers, but without seeing the other Shaman cards in the mini set, since I think we only have 2 of them revealed, there is no way for us to possibly tell if there's going to be some like legendary that supports weapon. So until then, I would say this is probably unplayable card, sadly. Alright, time for Warlock's card, which is honestly my favorite card in this mini set for the rares that got revealed. This card is really funny if you really think about it, because it supports the Zoo strategy because it's a demon, and there's a bunch of demon support that have been floating around with Warlock in standard that just doesn't have a real big payoff. And on top of that, it supports a long forgotten Hearthstone card that I've been wanting to try to make a deck with, and I keep forgetting it exists. Deck of Chaos. This card plus Deck of Chaos could make some insane combinations that I'm just looking so much forward to. Sure, in those style of decks, you're going to run basically no spells, and you're just going to be the equivalent of running Living Seed in the Moonfang deck, where it just whiffs after you get the Moonfang out of your deck. But it's still going to be funny, and I really am looking forward to making a deck around it. And even outside of the meme decks, I could see this scene play as just a card to recruit some spells out of your deck or progress your questline without even having to worry about drawing into additional cards. So overall, I think this will actually probably see a lot of play, or at least day one it will see a lot of play, and I'm looking forward to using this a lot. Probably as much as the Priest common to try to make Boar Priest work. Warrior's rare is Blacksmithing Hammer, which is honestly kind of cool that they're including another profession tool in this mini set, just to finish off the theme of the profession tools that was introduced in United and Stormwind. Mounts kind of just dropped off the face of the planet. Oh well. This card, I don't know how valuable it's actually going to be, given the fact that the most meta relevant warrior deck is actually Questline Warrior, and the Questline reward will actually just eat up this card whenever you have it out. So I don't know how useful it would be in that type of deck. I know there is a lot of weapon support in Standard right now that hasn't really seen any play, that this might actually make into an actual deck, which is great news for me because I've actually tried to make this style of deck work in the past. However, it didn't work that well, and I kind of gave up with it. Or this card could find home in Control Warrior, which would also fit it pretty well, as it will give some type of removal tool late in the game, given how many times you can shuffle in your deck. If you just have a leftover mana for a turn, you could just trade this in and gain it to durability until you actually need it to remove minions on board, or just go face. Is actually a pretty good type of win condition to add to Control Warrior. So overall, I think this card will actually probably see some type of home in something. It's very versatile, which means it'll have plenty of opportunity to find a location to actually call home. The final rare in the mini set is Multicaster. This card is honestly pretty good. The first class that I can think of using this is Mage again, but Mage already has a bunch of draw power cards available to them. Honestly, this card could fit in any class that has two type of schools of magic in it commonly, such as Warlock or Demon Hunter, which both have Shadow and Fell magic school spells. So it is kind of weird seeing all these pirates in this mini set and no actual pirate synergy whatsoever between the cards. Maybe that's going to be reserved for the legendaries, or maybe they were just afraid to give Questline Warrior any more tools than the Cannoneer that they gave as a common. So I definitely would say this is probably a great way to end off the rares within the mini set, since it is a decent enough card that will probably see some type of play. Mattis Bomber is the only epic in this entire mini set, and sadly it is probably one of the worst cards in the entire mini set. It's definitely a card that you don't want to even pull. I don't know what they were really thinking. Guess just bring back an old kind of fan favorite card back into the game in a bigger and I guess worse version than the... However, there is one upside. Cenarian Ward now has less chance to spawn a Nataline instead of any other 8-cost unit, and this is pretty good for a stat line for that, but that's honestly the only use for this card. You're never going to include it in an actual deck. I'm actually kind of shocked that Blizzard hasn't ever released a legendary that makes all randomly targeted effects target only enemies. That seems like a perfect legendary to actually have in some type of set. Well, those are all the cards that have been revealed so far. It's kind of sad to say, but all the commons were way more interesting than the rares or even the one epic. Hopefully the pattern isn't followed with the legendaries, because I'm really looking forward to seeing what the 4 legendaries actually do, and hopefully they will help shape up the metagame a bit different than we currently have. And like always, until next time, if you enjoyed the video, please leave a like, comment, and subscribe, and bye bye.